And we're going to play good idea, bad idea, worse idea, lean it. Our topic is automation. Give me just some good advice, a good idea on how to best handle automation.
A good idea is to give your people a specific goal to become engineering minded rather than operations minded, and then automation is a solution.
All right. I go to you, Brian. Give me a bad idea for security automation.
Bad idea for security automation, I would say trust a vendor that they're going to actually give you the right automation to fix your problem.
All right, Leonid, give me a worse
I got a
idea.
worse idea. Think that your problems are vendors to fix and not yours with the help of some tools.
I like it.
I like that.
All right, let's begin
Welcome,
this show.
everybody.
What do you
The
say?
CISO series video chat is ready to begin.
All right, welcome everybody. It is CISO Series Video Chat. Our topic today is hacking the promises of automation, an hour of critical thinking of what manual repetitive tasks we can automate and what we cannot, which is the cannot is important to approach as well. So the two gentlemen who will be joining me for today's video chat, you just met them. It's Brian Lozada, the CISO over at HBO Max, and Leonid Belkin, the CTO over at Torque. Torque, they're our sponsor for today's video chat. They actually have a no-code automation solution, and we'll get into a little bit of that on today's video chat. All right, 7 different ways you can participate in today's video chat. For those of you regulars, you know all this, so just start participating. But there is the chat room. You can submit your worst automation technique. That's what I want to know. But we also want to know, how can we make automation 10% better? We're not looking to solve all automation, but how can we slightly improve automation? You'll be able to vote in the polls. We'll have those up soon. And you can join us on video at any time with Bring Me On to ask a question or make a comment. We don't get a lot of people doing that, so please feel free to do that. Andrew, our producer, will try to bring as many of you on as possible. Ask a question anytime. If you look at the very bottom of the screen, there's a button that says, or it just says the text, ask a question. Well, if you click on it, it's a button, and you can go ahead and ask a question. Please do that. And vote for your favorite question at any time as well. All right, today's schedule, you just saw it. Good advice, bad advice, worse advice. Also, please get in your worst automation techniques and how to make it 10% better. At 20 minutes past the hour, we'll put the poll live for the worst automation technique. And at 20 minutes past the hour, we will play a round of I Object. Dustin Sachs will be joining us. And at 30 minutes past the hour, we will pick the 2 worst automation techniques and play the Department of Yes. At 40 minutes past the hour, those 2 people who had those bad ideas will come on and face off and argue why their worst idea is absolutely the worst. And at 45 minutes past the hour, we'll have our last question, final advice. And then stick around for our meetup. That is a lot of fun. You get to have FaceTime with everybody and have some real, actual conversations. And it's a lot of fun to meet with your fellow security professionals. All right. Our next Friday video chat, we're not doing one next Friday. We're off. I believe it's a long weekend, which we usually avoid the Fridays on long weekends. But the following Friday, the 25th, we'll be doing Hacking Sprawl, an hour of critical thinking about how to manage everyone's ability to harness and deploy computing power. If you look at the very bottom of your screen, you will see a link to register for that week's video chat. Guess what? If you click on it, you will not be taken out of this video chat. So go ahead and click on that and register for next week's video chat. Why do you want to do that? Well, if you register by 5 p.m. next Tuesday, or actually it's going to be the Tuesday beforehand, I should say the Tuesday before the 25th, you're automatically entered in a raffle to win one of these awesome CISO Series jackets, which, by the way, you see this? This is soon going to be the old CISO Series logo. We're redesigning a brand new CISO Series logo. So you're going to want a cool, new, awesome jacket, won't you? All right, now let's get into our actual show. All right, the topic is hacking the promises of automation. I'm going to start with you, Leonid. What was the promise of automation in security?
Somehow the promise of automation turned on being the fact that you could have less people, or people would expect things to happen by themselves, like that.
Yeah. And what do you want to add to that, Brian? That was one of the big things. And and the big thing that was really sold is you'll have more free time. Who has more free time?
Yeah, I think it was you're going to have more free time, and you're just going to free up your resources to be used in other strategic areas. I don't think we've seen that yet. I don't think we've seen that level of automation so that we can use our resources in a more strategic way. So free time, I don't think there's anything as free time. It's like using that time more appropriately to solve problems, right? And it just hasn't happened yet.
Which is, I think that's kind of maybe our key theme here too, is that we want to use automation really to not be doing the mundane tasks, right,
Bingo.
Leonid?
Yep.
Wait. Not
Okay.
just, right? People indeed see the automation as let's call it a dirty work, repetitive work, non-creative work. But wait, with the modern pace of rolling out of new technologies, sometimes the goal of automation is not to prevent manual work, but just to react faster. You cannot react in a manual way to things that originate from other automatic tasks.
Give me a more specific example of that. That's a great point.
Ooh, perfect example. You are protecting cloud-based applications. The pace of updates that your engineering counterparts are rolling out is such that finding and immediately remediating cloud security posture issues, you just cannot do this manually. Guess what? They roll them out automatically. If you try to keep up manually, it's a game you will never win, ever.
Brian, do you have any automation in place that helps the reaction time for you?
Great points that Leonid is bringing up. I think we do have some automation in place, but we take it at the onset. We try to build with the engineers so that our automation is with them. This is a bingo buzzword. We hear it all the time, shift left. But
Yeah.
seriously, if you are not in lock and step with your development organization and help them build that solution, you got to be at the ground level. They are solving problems at the ground level. Be with them, work with them. I tell the engineers all the time, security is a state of mind. Have that state of mind when you are working with your developers on that problem set, and you could automate remediation with them. We do a lot of things within HBO Max with event-driven architectures on purpose. As things are being built, we want reactions to come off of logs that are based on that automation, and it gives us the opportunity to respond to things. But you can't just do that after the architecture is built. You have to do it while you're building it, or while those problems. Yes, you have to do it while those developers are developing that.
Hey, Stuart Seymour has a question here. Lots of the introduction was about the worst, but what is the low-hanging fruit? And I think this might be a good way for those people who have done little to no automation and they want to, essentially get started. What is the best automation, really basic, so it catches momentum for incident response? I think that's a good question. Leonid, what's your answer to that one?
So my advice would be not to start with trying to automate things end to end. I think Brian is spot on about the event-driven nature of any security automation, right? Now, here's the sort of like caveat. People always try to look at automation with an end-to-end goal. I have to take a certain type of an event completely off my table. And guess what? That is not easy because, many constraints and many possible things. What if you introduce automation at first, not to take the event off your table, but to shave off, say, 80% of the time it takes you to handle that particular event, only leaving 20. That is a much more realistic goal, much easier. Bring your human into the loop, albeit shorten the time they need to spend, again, for starters.
And Brian, how do you train your team to look for opportunities in automation as you're building? Is there some trait that's inherent in a task that can be easily automated?
So great question. I think how we look at it is I like to start off with automation, like simple terms, doing the simple things, alerting. How do you get those alerts to the problem solvers? Nowadays, think about all the telemetry that you have in your environment. Are folks who is actually literally eyes on glass nowadays? Doesn't happen unless that alert comes to you, and in the method that you are used to getting that alert, whether that's Slack, whether that's I don't know who gets alerts via email anymore, but something that is in your face, right? I think starting off the automation there, I think is smart. It's that small angle. You start there, and things can then drive more automation that way. So that's one. The areas that I like to focus on automation is what are the tasks that we are constantly doing over and over again that we can do a simple first step automation. What are those because that's where I see the justification of adding my resources to actually create that automation. That's time and money that you're spending there, right? You're taking them away from strategic areas to put them towards this. I could justify that if we're going to be closing that loop of that mundane task that constantly happens. That's one. And then two, adding that value to the development organization, that they see that these automations that security is working with them are helping them as well, not just in security, maybe just hygiene or just, maintenance of the environment.
What do you, Lena, with your product, my feeling is a lot of people who use your product are getting first experiences with automation, given how you're sort of selling a sort of an easy way to deal with automation. What are you seeing them using it for first?
So, that actually comes back to Brian's original comment about trusting the vendor. The way we position ourselves, first and foremost, and whatever we are delivering, not as the product, but actually...
No, just go
I
on.
am a vendor. There is no argument there. I'm not going to deny that. But here's the deal. What is the goal? Is the goal to provide you an automation platform so that you do whatever, decide how best you can use it? Or is the goal to actually say, okay, as a provider, let's call it, rather than the vendor of a certain service, we measure not me personally, but of course the service, with respect to how many automations have I actually managed to provide you? How many, closing the loop faster, if that is the KPI you want? How many, freeing time for different, hopefully more strategic objectives? The problem with automation products is the fact that sort of like the conversation ends when you, say, Brian, buy a product from somebody. Not so much when the automation is a service, right? There, the relationship goes all the way until you actually get the value or you don't pay. And there's a huge difference. And to your point, I think Brian was spot on. First things that people do with us within sort of like the first hour of adoption are Slack bots delivering the notifications. You know what, Brian? Not only notifications, but sometimes that first step. Okay, I got this alert. I need to pull in the additional information quickly with a / command, with something from the same environment at the place and time where the person is, rather than, oh my God, I need to open 3 different tabs, start looking for the information, piece it together. And that's the first step, big time.
And does that alone become the aha moment, or is there something else? Because my feeling with automation, there's got to be a moment where like, oh, there was a time we didn't have this kind of a thing. Like, what becomes the aha moment for any automation effort? Brian, what do you think?
I think that's a start. I mean, when they start seeing that time coming back to problem solving instead of opening up 3 tabs, it's like, wait, there's a lot of power behind automation. And if you put the right strategic approach to it, you can get value from it. So, and I love what Leonette said as well. Like, as a service is different than saying I'm providing you a platform that's just going to work. I mean, in my experience, I haven't had a positive one that a platform works for automation, but a service where you're getting value out of that they're adding towards your work stream, I think is different, right? There's more skin in the game for a business partner to help you on that angle.
And by the way, I just want to make a comment to the community that we are getting good ideas. I always give them crap that they give me way more bad ideas than good ideas. But
send them in. We need your bad ideas.
We still do need your bad ideas. And there's some good bad ideas that are coming in, so I appreciate them. A lot of them about automating something that else is already automated. So there's sort of this endless loop of automating the things that are automated. I've seen a lot of tips on that respect for that matter. So, Lena, one of the things we actually reported about on one of our podcasts was one of the bizarre circumstances that has happened with automation is, while it was sold to us as it's going to reduce your staff, many organizations that want to automate have had to increase staff to be able to do automation. What have you seen happening, Lena? And I know that the goal of your product
is not bizarre at all. I'll tell you exactly how it happens. It happens when an organization that is on the adopting end of the automation has a fundamentally sort of like body approach, right? Fundamentally human operational approach. And then they would like to adopt automation because they have heard all the wonderful things we mentioned already. But for them, automation is not something that we do. It's something that they do, right? Because we, our process is manual, we've defined them, right? And then the increase in the required headcount is, okay, now we need the automators. The other scenario, or actually the scenario where adopting automation doesn't bring you to that bizarre or very undesired outcome, is to adopt, kind of as Brian put it, an engineering state of mind. Think of it for a moment. The word engineer means that you build engines, right? Engines that can take you the distance if it's for the transportation, or can produce something for you. You don't train yourself to walk faster or to climb higher, right? And once you understand that to start benefiting from the automation means that you, not somebody additional that you hire, but you need to adopt an engineering state of mind. Think about any security process as events, perfectly mentioned by Brian. And then, yes, there are steps that are taking place as a response to the event. Think of them as an information flow, right? Who, what, when, where, right? What piece of information from the event do you take to what other system to enrich, to classify, and so on? What remediative steps do you take as a response? That's where you don't fall into that pitfall of bringing in more and more and more people, but you actually start seeing the improvement in efficiency. And by the way, longer term effect, your people that adopt this state of mind are going to be much more happy because, hey, it's more fun to build an engine than to repeat the same operation and move the paper from one side of the table to another time after time after time.
Completely agree on that respect. All right. Hey, we need more questions from the audience. Oh, what time are we at? Oh, we're just a few minutes from playing I Object. So, and also, so you got 4 more minutes to get your bad ideas to be put in the poll. If you've not clicked the link at the bottom of the screen to register for our video chat in 2 weeks, please go ahead and do just that. And then also, Dustin Sachs, who's going to be playing I Object, get him ready. You be ready in just a few minutes to start. All right, let me go to the next question. So, one of the parts of the title of today's show is what we can't automate. So I want to talk about the degrees of automation. We talked about the most simplest tasks like Slack alerts. I'm interested to know for you, Brian, what is at the highest level of something you have automated now that you've been pretty excited about?
One of the biggest things that I've appreciated and what we've done at HBO Max is we drive a lot of things out of native cloud service tools. So we're getting things out of CloudTrail. We're getting things out of our, Inspector, Guard Duty. We're feeding that into Security Hub. And then we use Event Bridge to actually drive things, right? So Event Bridge helps us correlate all of those events. Again, event-driven architecture. And then we use Cloud Custodian to kind of like create those Lambda functions. It's very powerful. One thing that is sometimes on the side is forgotten is like it takes care in feeding. Why? Because we're a dynamically shifting environment. That is not a set it and forget it type of a thing, right? I think that's what folks think about as automation is like, I have an automation there. I could leave it there for 6 months. You can't. Like you have to monitor that automation, the success of it. Is it really working? And when the development organization changes their approach to solving a problem, guess what? That automation also needs to change. So that entire architecture we built, you're constantly engineering. You're constantly thinking of how to improve it as the environment is improving its use of technology. So I think that's where you do have that disconnect that organizations they're increasing their bodies for automation because maybe they're not putting the resources on how that environment's changing that frequently.
All right. And Leonid, with your customers, what's the most impressive automation you've seen?
Wow. Actually, the beauty is that sometimes, quite often, we are surprised by how far people could go. Sometimes people would look at really interesting events of somebody sharing data with an external person over Google Drive or OneDrive, and then communicating with them, explaining them the corporate policy and asking them whether they're confident that it should be shared or not. Seeing that somebody's forwarding emails belonging to certain, data types and so on. And then again, reaching out, explaining you know what? You actually made me think about it. I think that almost all automations that completely impressed me, and I was literally looking and saying, oh my God, I wouldn't have thought about it. Good thing that we have customers, were somehow involving people in the loop. These were not automations that did mumbo jumbo machine learning and then came up with some, universal truths. But they would collect the data, understand the gravity of a certain event, reach out to the relevant person, get their creativity, input, critical thinking where it is impacting the most, and then do the remediation of the situation automatically. These are the things that are most powerful, in my humble opinion.
And I like your humble opinion. All right. Can we invite Dustin on because we're going to be playing a game? And actually, while we're waiting, let's ask this quick question. Joshua Bregler asks this question: how do you measure the ROI for automation? And do you? And Hadass sort of commented, reduce turnover rate, which is a good way. And then adding to that question, I want to throw this in. Stuart Seymour says, adding to the ROI question, also what KPIs do you keep? So are there KPIs connected to automation? Have you been measuring ROI, Brian, at all?
We measure how many engineering hours we've spent on repetitive tasks and how it's been reduced with these type of automations. We track that in Jira, that we report on that, and based on the engineering hours of what we spent on this, that's how we prioritize what we're going to automate next, actually.
Wow. Okay. So do you have a good idea, like before you started, like if we automate this, it'll reduce X number of engineering hours?
X number of engineering hours and response time. Like how many hours our engineers are responding to this particular event. Like hours go into that. That's wasted. I don't want to call it money, but it's energy and effort. And when we do that, it also gets excitement to the engineers when they see that list of things that have been repetitive. Like, that's the problem I want to tackle. It gets them to ideate and think differently on how they want to use automation.
I'm throwing this to you, Leonid, as we're waiting for Dustin to join in. What's your take on with ROI that you're seeing with your own product, with your customers? What are you seeing?
First of all, to the question of whether you have to measure, yes, you absolutely have to measure it. Otherwise, you are not investing your times and efforts wisely. So we see two, let's say, families of KPIs. There is a deterministic approach that Brian is representing, sort of like think of it as a prioritized queue of tasks where each next task is going to save you the most, be it vulnerability exploitation time, right? If we're talking about responding faster, or manual repetitive work. But indeed, things like that. There's a measurement talking, by the way, Brian, about events. Which percentage of all of your Guard Duty Security Hub events today do have automated follow-up versus which don't? Are you moving ahead? Are you not moving ahead with covering that type of an event? And again, right, the goal is not to cover all types of events, but do it prioritized to the ones that are prevalent in your environment. Then, as Hadass suggested, there are softer things, the satisfaction of your people, the levels of creativity you're getting out of them because they are now thinking about shift left security operations, which essentially means security engineering, reduced turnover rates. Are they recommending their friends to join the organization? Because, hey, talent around security is not easy to find. And if you have ways to lure people in, such as we work smart, we automate things, we think ahead rather than we just chase our own tails and respond, well, people will come. Everybody wants an interesting job.
Great. By the way, vote, and we're having a hard time getting Dustin to join. He was on with us last week. Just refresh your browser, Dustin, if you haven't done that yet. That often solves a lot of problems. We were discussing this, like how many computer problems have been solved by rebooting your computer?
Like most of them.
Most of them. But by the way, our poll is up for the best bad ideas. So if you've not voted in the poll, please go ahead and do that right now. There are some awful ideas, and we will be challenging. Dutch is Dutch here, by the way. Speaking of that, I don't know if I saw Dutch here today. All right, let's go as we're waiting for Dustin to join. Hopefully, he will be joining. He kind of disappeared on us a second ago. Let's go back to my questions actually, and go ahead and ask a question yourself, audience, if you haven't already. What are people not automating right now? Leonid, I'm going to throw this to you first. What aren't they automating now that they should be automating? Like, it's like, why aren't you guys paying attention to this? You should be automating this. And what is that?
So I think that the one most under-automated area is actually the one that should be automated the most, and that's remediation. I think that many people that today start their journey into automation, they are, I don't know, maybe because of the lack of confidence, maybe because of, again, sort of like a leap of faith that it requires, are very much focusing on just improving the monitoring and orchestrating the tickets. I'm not saying that this is not valuable, but again, you cannot compare the value of opening somebody a ticket and hopefully dragging them by the nose to say, hey, here's a ticket for you to solve, than actually solving the ticket, solving 50% of it or whatever. So I think that the thing people should be thinking more is actually remediation. And yeah, it may be scary, but then again, with the ROI, maybe the I is higher, but hey, the R is tremendous, right? So remediation.
And Brian, you said that you have, you do your stuff inline as you're developing. In the process of your developing, what have you seen has been like the biggest bang for the buck? Like, oh, if everyone knew this, they'd be automating.
Yeah, I think the remediation piece is key. What Leonid is kind of like highlighting. What we do too is like we are very vocal when we talk about our remediation to the development organization. And it's not to say that they did something wrong. Hey, it's not to do that. It's to give confidence to them so that they are one, ideating quicker. What we tell the organization is, as security practitioners, we want to enable them to take risk. And by enabling them to take risk is letting them go out there, let them ideate, let them have that what they need to do, within the cloud environment. And the security is going to work with them to make sure those automations are, the remediation automations are built into that build. So if they misconfigure, if there's something that doesn't, line up, we're going to completely have their back and fix it, and it really get some attention there. So, it's be very vocal about what you're doing, because you're also going to get ideas from the developers on where they think either you're lacking visibility or where they want automation from a security perspective as well.
All right, we're unfortunately having some issues with Dustin, who's struggling here a little bit with. By the way, it's not Dustin's fault. We've had issues with Crowdcast in the past, but this a really look. This conversation, by the way, guys, this has been great. And what we'll do is, at least in 4 minutes, we're going to play Department of Yes in a while. If you have not voted in the polls, everybody, please vote in the polls. Vote in the polls. We want to know what the truly worst ideas are. All right, here's a question. Is there such a thing as automation drift? Meaning I automated today and, it's not working the way it is 6 months from now, or maybe 2 months from now. Brian, both of you are nodding your heads. I'll go to you first, Brian.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Anytime you automate something, I talk about Terraform drift. It's a problem that we're trying to fix right now, but we go fix something, no matter what, in an hour, if that Terraform run goes again, it brings that issue right back into the environment. So you have to see how you're taking it back to that Terraform state to fix it there. So drift is, it happens. Like, you got to monitor and make sure you're staying on top of that.
And the thing is, if there's so many people who have their hands on an application and some automation effort is making, X number of calls, how do you alert anyone who's making changes in one area that, hey, there's an automation attached to this. Can you check it? How do you do that, Brian?
When we actually run our automations, the service team that it's running against, they all SNS, they all get messages, they all get Slack bots. Hey, we just ran this. So we do inform them of any action that we do. We don't want to go ahead and break something that could be, production impacting. So that's part of the spec that we do for all of our automations, that as we onboard a service team to actually put it in, these are the type of things that need to be completed before we actually engage in it. We're starting to think about too is giving power to the developer so that they can actually engage the automations themselves. Send them a Slack bot that says, do you approve of this automation running? Put the accountability back on them. They would actually have to engage, click on it, and actually through Slack or how we're thinking about it is, and then it'll run. So captures for change management, and then again, it's empowering and enabling them to take some control of the automations running in their environment.
All right, hold on. Just if you have not selected one of the bad ideas, please go ahead and do that, because we're going to do that in 2 minutes. But I'm going to go to Leonid for the next one. Leonid, actually, not the next one. I want to stay on this automation drift issue. How does this come about? I think this is just a normal course of action of doing business that you get drift. Like, it's inevitable. How do people get alerted, I guess, through your program that, hey, you just changed something?
So here's the deal. First of all, drift is a normal just nature of things. One of the ideas that we brought into the security automation that for some weird reason we're lacking there is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm originally a software engineer for many years. I have a computer science degree. So way before I started dealing with security automation, David, I had exactly the same questions of, hey, I'm building a whatever software system with multiple interfaces. How do I prevent the interface drift, right? How do I make sure that changes introduced somewhere down the line don't affect another piece of software, right? And guess what? Software engineering industry throughout the past 20 years have developed techniques, approaches, architectures to solve these very problems. As a matter of fact, it solved them once for software engineering. Then the testing process that used to be very manual, guess what? Got automated, right? Brian, I believe that your engineering over at HBO Max have a lot of automated tests. How do they prevent drift there? Of course they do. There are techniques. Same approach applies, right? The goal is not to reinvent the wheel. Our automation service sort of like rides on the wave of shift left and agile driven development with progressive deployments every time a new change is being pushed out to production. These things have been ironed out. And, at the end, the shift left thing, it kind of makes a level field. It's saying, I don't care if you're developing business logic or testing logic or security event response logic. It's all not that different.
All right, we got a call just came in.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right, here we go. We are going to play the Department of Yes, and they are sufficiently bad ideas. And so you know what you need to do. You need to tell me why you want to actually do this. And we have one that's far and away the winner here. And I know I actually asked this question to the community to ask if there's anything in cybersecurity that is actually this. And the answer, unfortunately, was no. So here it goes. I throw it to you, Leonid. Again, Department of Yes, you have to accept this and tell me why you want to accept it without being facetious. Bad idea for your automation. And it's on the heels of what we were just discussing. Set it and forget it.
This is a great idea because nothing teaches you to care about something than once not caring about it and having to live with the consequences. Please do it. Great idea, is going to impact your organizational culture tremendously. Just one. So.
Emphatic. I appreciate it. Why are we going to set it and forget it, Brian?
We're going to set it and forget it because when it has to come up again, we're going to throw more bodies on it. It's going to cost more money to actually fix it. So if you want to increase the resource size of your team, set it and forget it. It's going to cost you a lot more money.
I think you're being a little facetious with that. I know I'm giving you a losing grade on that one. All right. All right. We're going to the next one. Here we go. This one, actually, I just like the creativity of this idea. Right here. There's two others, but I'm going to go with this one with slight. Well, I'll have to go with the one that was voted up slightly better. Automate everything. Oh, by the way, who did the set it and forget it? I forgot to ask. Speak up if you did set it and forget it because we want you to come on later. Well, the first idea was Hadass. Great. Hadass is the first one. Second one, automate everything so you can play video games all day. All right. I will start with you, Brian. Why is this a good idea? And it seems, are you a gamer? Is that a gamer chair that you're sitting in?
It is. It absolutely is a gaming chair.
And do you do racing games yourself?
I do not. This is just a very comfortable chair, and I could take. I use the headphones, but I could take Bluetooth calls from the chair if necessary. So
okay.
Why it's a good idea? I think playing video games helps your creativity and thinking outside of the box when you're navigating through these games. So I do feel like if we automate more, gives you more time to actually get into these gaming worlds where you can get your creative juices thinking or get your creative juices flowing.
And because you're a Marine?
Sir, yes, sir! That's correct.
All right. The great idea. By the way, I wrote a whole article about how games help you in security, so I like that. Leonid, what do we want to do? To automate everything so you can play video games all day.
So you know what? I'm going to add on top of it. If you're not playing strategy games, play esports. They train your reaction. They train sort of like the speed of response, making the correct decision time over time, or you never win that fight or that race is also tremendously helpful. Acting under pressure, making the right decisions, responding quickly. They train it really well in the absence of actual skill.
Phenomenal answers. Great job, both of you. Excellent. So that was Hadass and Dustin. Hopefully, Dustin will be able to fix your video problem to bring you on. We're going to bring you on at around 40 minutes past the hour. So in about or 45 minutes past the hour. Let's get the good idea poll up, Andrew. Let's throw that poll up there, the 10% better poll. And we got a lot of questions that just came in. Let's take a look. Nancy Ross, who I don't think you've joined us before, Nancy, so thank you. Let's see what we could. What are some good example of the safest and highest value remediations to automate? Safe meaning that it won't break operations. I'll start with you, Leonid, on that one.
So I think the safest things are to react to some kind of content event. Imagine that you have an e-commerce business, an information website, and you have very typical events on data scraping, denial of service, etc. Safest automation: drop the source session IP address user, put them in a penalty box first time for 30 minutes. If it happens with the same source again, half a day. Same idea for a week, right? It's automatically releasing itself. That's the notion of a penalty box, and it saves a lot of manual work of chasing after these malicious sessions.
Great tip. What do you suggest, Brian?
That's a great tip. That's on kind of like the threat actor defense side. I would say on the misconfiguration or development side, on the internal side, simple actions like an S3 bucket was configured unencrypted. Go ahead and just encrypt it real quick. It's not really gonna impact too much of the operations or anything like that. Or security groups for ports that were left open or in an any. You could automate those actions and it won't really impact any sort of operations or production. So understanding your development pipeline and what are those 2 or 3 actions that you could automate that won't break anything from an operations perspective, you could start there.
This is a good question from Rick Woodward. How do you practically keep automated processes? I'll start with you again, Leonid, and this actually might be good for you, being that your product is actually a platform. How do you practically, or I'm assuming it is, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're good.
So how do you practically keep, again, from Rick Woodward, how do you practically keep automated processes from becoming black boxes, especially after the personnel who used to do the manual process leaves the organization? All right, this is happening. Go ahead, explain.
Rick, this is a perfect question. It kind of takes me back to my original comment that automation has to be something that you do and not something that they do. Who are you? The actual subject matter expert, the security engineers, the security operations people, right? It cannot be that automation has a single owner, and then again, these people leave, and the drift becomes. That's the whole point. The toolage used for automation should be such that all members of the team should be comfortable with it to an extent. It's perfectly fine to have more senior people versus more junior people, but it's absolutely imperative that everyone can at least modify existing automations or explain what they're doing. This is where no-code platforms, this is where sort of like democratized sharing platforms among the team come really into a very significant play, right? Not a code that someone wrote once and it resides somewhere, but something very collaborative. That's has to be from the day zero. Otherwise, there is no way of escaping the pitfall Rick is mentioning.
What about you? What have you seen? I mean, people unfortunately come and go. That's the process. But by the way, there's such a history just in technology in general of like when someone leaves, then the knowledge goes, and like we're all screwed, kind of a thing. So how do you protect yourself from that kind of behavior, or not behavior, but just the reality of how business operates? Brian.
I would say a few things. One, collaboration, I think, is important. Democratizing it, I think, is also important, but foundational, right? When we look at our automations, I mentioned it earlier, we have like an automation spec, which everybody kind of codes against, so that we all know these are the, specific areas on how our automations not only are built, how they're maintained, so that we could shift in and out resources. So if we want our resources to advance, move on, go on to other places. That's just part of tech. So we need to have that foundation that supports that model, that they're going to come in, they're going to solve some problems, and they're going to move on. So we have a lot of documentation that we've put together in our wikis that is very interactive, that even has some of the Terraform templates that you can click on and actually run, right? We do it that quickly so that we can, cycle in the resources so they could take advantage of these. So I think that's a good approach, is to make these available, make these coding off of one kind of automation spec, and share those and ideate on top of those even more.
The 10% better poll is up already, and I just want to read. One of them is already the runaway hit so far in terms of votes, and it's kind of obvious, but I think this is, requires a conversation about it. Is look at your most repetitive, the rinse and repeat processes, and start there. Now, I, though, asked you, Leonid, at the very beginning, like, what's the easiest thing to automate? And you said Slack bots, which was easy. And that's not necessarily the most repetitive, but it's an easy thing. It's always good to do something that's easy to see how it works and operates. And then also, Brian, you had mentioned that you're doing this while you're in development mode, so it's not something done after the fact. My feeling is the way you described it, Brian, is kind of the way you find the most repetitive tasks, or is there some other way you do it? I'll start with you, Brian, and we'll come back to you, Leonid. What do you think?
It is the best for us. I think it's the best way to find the most repetitive task as we're building it, or as we're seeing these actions happen, especially when it's event driven. When you're seeing all of these events come through, you could actually say, these are the events that I want to automate first, the response to it first, or at least the alerting for it first, because it's the most that's spending my resources time on. So that's how it's easier for us to do it. It also depends on again, that's during the building phase. If you're doing something on the external side that you're monitoring for threats that are coming into your environment, maybe you start looking off of those events towards the threats, the most type of threats that you're getting into your environment. And you start there as well.
And I'm going to come back to you, Leonid, and we also have a really good question from Craig Herter. So go ahead. What's your take? Where's the best way to find the most repetitive tasks?
Here's sort of like, again, me coming from a software engineering background, we noticed a long time ago that despite different applications, different software products being in different fields, they have repetitive tasks in them, right? Today, for example, when you're developing a web user interface and you need a table of data, there's no way you will be implementing that table by yourself, right? Everybody did the tables. You will find the most suitable control. Same about a tree, data search, etc. Why should that be fundamentally different with security automation? Things that Brian is facing in a very modern cloud-native operation world, specifically with AWS, many organizations would face very similar processes. I see a lot of interest among our customers towards what are others automating. And to tell you the truth, I think that the best way to answer this question is collaboratively as an industry rather than just each and every organization by themselves. Now, it's not either or. I completely subscribe to Brian's notion of data-driven prioritization based on your events. Sometimes you still don't anticipate the events that will come, and this is where the collaboration comes.
David Peach, who I know does CISO, or his CISO, or he's a privacy title, I don't know what, but he's running security over at The Economist. And he makes this comment about automated processes. And I'm interested, Brian, if you have like a single source of truth. He says, automated processes should be documented fully so everyone understands what is being done, why is it done, what is the result expected to be, and why did this task get created? Is there some single source of truth in your organization, Brian?
I use Wiki. I think about, like, that's how all of our developers within Wiki and Jira, that's how our developers communicate. If you think about the modern workforce, everybody grew up online. They grew up searching for data, using that data to actually make a decision. So we create these Wiki pages that are very similar to like a Google search, so that they could feel comfortable coming to our wiki page or our informative page for these particular reasons. And a lot of the automations that we start and on our automation spec, we have at the top, what problem is it solving? You have to answer that first. What's the first problem it's solving? Then we actually go down how we're going to do it. But it needs to answer so that anybody that goes to it, they can see this is what the purpose of it.
Okay. And you were nodding your head there a little bit, and I want to bring on, actually, let's bring them on now. Bring on Hadass and Dustin, and while we're waiting for them, and hopefully Dustin will be able to come on now. Maybe there's some way within Torque itself to create a single source of truth, like to each automation, yes?
Absolutely, right. The platform comment comes in here. So one thing First of all, we at Torque believe in a very important engineering principle, which is do one thing really well, right? There are many solutions that try to do a lot of things, some better, some worse. We focus on giving security professionals a tool to express their automated workflows. That's how we call them, in the best possible way. This means that in order to tap in to all of these engineering processes, exactly as Brian points out, we need to be sort of like a first-class citizen inside the engineering platforms. Yes, absolutely, Jira. And we have to allow full GitOps cycle for automations when it comes to deployment and versioning and approval, et cetera, et cetera. Similarly for documentation, et cetera. So if you have a single source of truth and you are a GitHub-centric organization or Bitbucket-centric organization, this is where these things live. This is where the versions live, with a discussion on, wait a second, I'm not approving this change. It has to fit in there, absolutely. And of course, the one thing we hopefully do really well is the actual ability to express the logic that you want to automate.
All right, we have Hadass who joined us, and I think Dustin is unfortunately still not able to get. He's not unfortunately able to get on. So unfortunately, Dustin's not here, but I will happily. Defend his which was automated so everyone can play video games. So. I will just argue with. So I want you to argue with me, Hadass. You have the set it and forget it. Would you think now? Why do you believe that is worse than automating so everyone can play video games?
Because not only are you creating team bonding capabilities with your playing video games and extra time for your team to work together. Automating so that your team can play video games, to me, insinuates that all the automation has created your environment into a very good video game, that now it's less like work and more like fun. Whereas set it and forget it, people don't even remember that it's there, so it's certainly not working for you.
So here's my argument of why I think Dustin's idea is far worse than yours. If you do the set it and forget it idea, there's going to be a period of time it's very much going to work. In fact, it's going to work very, very well. If we automate to play video games, then there is no staff to actually do cybersecurity. So that is far worse. There. So wait, Dustin's here. Wait, Dustin, you defend. What do you think? Dustin, defend why your idea is far worse than Hadass's.
So my idea is far worse because you're giving people, basically you're distracting them. And in order to be good security people, we have to be watching what's going on. But if you're too busy playing games and the automation goes wrong, what are you going to do? You're not going to find out until it's too late. The automation's going to take over. Skynet's going to become self-aware, and then you're in trouble.
No, I totally agree with that, except that if you've set it and forget it, then people don't even recognize it's there, so the automation isn't working for you at all. And now people are bored to death. So instead, what they're doing is not paying attention to their work and going and playing video games anyway. My idea incorporates your bad idea. That's how bad my bad idea is.
Right, but the only people who tend to forget things are really old people, and none of us want to be known as old people.
I don't appreciate you calling me old.
Whoa!
Wait a second. What if we rephrase it to set it and don't care about it anymore? Let the
see, it's my idea was bad enough as is. It didn't need to be changed. It didn't need to be updated because it was already so bad.
By the way, so kudos to both Hadass and Dustin here. Great arguments. I now throw this to Leonid and to Brian. Which idea truly is worse? I will start with you, Leonid.
I still tend to think that forget it is the worst idea. Forget it literally means not caring. Literally means, when you play the video games, you are at least, on the edge with something. You are, you're jumpy, you're around, you are present. When you forget it, bad things happen. Sorry, Dustin.
All right. Brian, what do you think? What is far worse?
I agree. I think forgetting it is totally far worse. You're not engaged. You're not. You don't have extreme ownership of the problem if you don't know an automation's there actually fixing it. So, forgetting it is not the way to go.
All right. Excellent job, Hadass. By the way, as I have said before, those glasses are awesome.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I hope you can join us on our meetup afterwards, and you, Dustin, as well. And I know Brian Leonid, you'll hopefully be there as well. And to the audience, please stick around for our meetup at the end, which will be in 10 minutes. All right. Thank you very much, Hadass and Dustin. All right. So we have just a little bit of time left. What we're going to do, we'll chat for another. Oh, this was the question I want to ask. Craig Herter's question. I'm sorry, I didn't get to it earlier. Okay. Craig Herter asks, each situation is unique. However, what should enterprises be looking at? Managed services providing automation or building an automation suite? And I wouldn't be surprised if managed service providers are using your product, Leonid. What do you think about this question of Craig's?
So first of all, yes, indeed, the product also serves a managed service provider. But here I have to say that my advice would be to put the automation at the core of your development processes, exactly as Brian presents it. I think managed service providers are great to serve organizations that are not, engineering centric. HBO, as not only a media company, it also has a lot of engineering development efforts. So I think that in such a company, and there are so many more companies today developing stuff in financial services, healthcare services, right? It's all about development. I think that when you are such an organization, you need to do engineering, security engineering in-house rather than outsourcing it, because then again, it becomes something that they do and not you do with all the derived problems.
Do you agree with that, Leonid? Do you agree with that, Brian? Do you agree with what Leonid said, Brian?
1,000%. It 100% depends on your industry, your organization, the engineering culture. And Leonid's correct. We are a heavily engineering culture at HBO Max, so that's why it makes sense for us to do it this way. Look, if we were in another industry and we could take the risk of leveraging an MSSP to actually do automation, it might be something we could do. But again, it's just you really have to put some thought process on where you want to put it. That extreme ownership depends, right? I like having extreme ownership because we're heavily an engineering shop. But again, if it was more enterprise IT or something that I could pass on and transfer that risk to an MSSP, I would consider it.
So, by the way, we are very close to the end here right now. If you have not clicked on the link at the bottom of the screen to register for the Friday video chat in 2 weeks, please go ahead and do that, because that is going to change just a few minutes to our link for our meetup that's going to be happening in just about 8 minutes exactly. I think probably any classic hiccup in an automation workflow is no different than any programming effort that, you just got to set it up as best as you can and then debug until you got it right. Is there something I'm missing here, Leonid?
You know what? We didn't get to play the game, but this is where I get to say I object. And
okay.
Here's why.
I said I. All right.
And here's why. So first and foremost, you could use programming languages like any programming language in order to write security automation. And then, yes, the life cycle would be exactly as you described it. But here's the deal. The world of security automations is slightly better defined than just programming anything, be it, for example, games that Dustin loves so much or anything else. Therefore, particularly for these automated processes, you could build an assistive and adaptive environment, right, that has all the right primitives, that sort of like understands the state of mind of a security engineer rather than any other software developer, etc., in order to reduce the cycles and make it much more, we call it internally, farm to table, rather than continuously debug before you get a chance to start trusting it. This is about choosing the right tool.
All right. What do you think, Brian?
I agree. I think it is choosing the right tool. I think one thing and I mentioned it earlier, is not forgetting that it is going to adapt with time, and you're going to have to constantly look at how that automation is going to adjust to how the business, how the development organization, how the problems that the developers are solving at the ground level are changing, because how that is changing and how they like to ideate and change, automations need to keep suit with that, or follow suit with that. So can't always, again, back to the set it and forget it. That's why it doesn't make sense. But staying close to the problem solvers at the ground level is incredibly important, so that those automations stay current and effective.
Okay, I'm going to start the wrap-up portion of the show. So, gentlemen, hold on. I'm just going to do a quick wrap-up, but I want to get closing comments from you and your sort of final advice on our topic, and also how to reach out to you, any sort of pitches you want to make. So, hang tight as I just do the last minute of our stuff. So, next Friday is Hacking Sprawl, as I said, but we're going to change that link. Andrew, go ahead and change it to our meetup portion in just a second. Hour of critical thinking about how to manage everyone's ability to harness and deploy computing power. As I said before, if you register by 5 p.m., not next Tuesday, the Tuesday afterwards, because it's going to be, we don't have a video chat next week, but you automatically get entered in a raffle to win one of these awesome CISO series jackets, which will have our new logo, which, by the way, has been chosen. We're just actually choosing color right now. Huge thanks to Leonid's company, Torque, for sponsoring this event. By the way, their website is torq.io. So torque.io to check them out. We've been talking about it. Hey, and starting in just 90 minutes from now, we are going to be doing our cybersecurity headlines week in review. And that's we do this over on CISO Series LinkedIn page. So you just go to our LinkedIn page on CISO Series. But at exactly that time, we will be live with Dave Sterling, who's the CISO of Zions Bank Corporation. And he'll be going through the 8 biggest stories of cybersecurity that week. And by the way, Brian was our guest last week, and it was awesome. Stick around for our meetup right there. The link there, you can see at the very bottom of the screen. You'll see that link right there. So you can go ahead and click on it now to join our meetup. If you've never joined, you'll see you have to sort of log into the platform, which is called Toucan. But it's fun. You're like a floating head. You join other floating heads. You have conversations. It's a lot of fun. Tell your friends to join us. We do this every Friday, except next Friday, at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And lastly, do you want to sponsor a video chat? Actually, I had a couple just open up, one in May and one in June. So I still do have one in each of those months available. Just email me at david@cisoseries.com. All right, what do we have? We've just a few minutes left. I'll let you Leonid, begin first. Please tell me how people, our audience, can get involved in Torque, how to reach out to you, and any last comments you may have.
Well, I think the main thing to remember, and it's very evident by this conversation, is that the subject of how to do automation is very much not a solved one, right? It's at the core of what many security organizations are battling today. And you know what? We at Torque believe in the service and the collaboration, right? Not selling a product that may or may not become shelfware based on how active the organization is. Therefore, we love engaging with organizations, working with, Fortune 10 and fast-growing technical enterprises alike. And the engagement there is indeed measured by the quality of living, right, that the organization starts feeling an improvement in when starting to adopt the automation, not about the amount of users or the amount of servers that we are touching. That's not what matters. That's it, I guess. I truly believe that this is the way success in automation should be measured, and I can be reached for any details, not necessarily commercial, just a discussion over at leonid@torque.io. That's it.
All right, LEONID. Here, I'll put it in the chat right here. Brian, I know you're always looking for talent over at HBO Max. What are you looking for these days?
It's funny you say that. Actually, our head of cloud security, Mrinal Shah, he actually just posted. He is hiring. So we're hiring a security automation specialist, actually. So he just posted it on LinkedIn. But we are hiring. There are several opportunities within the HBO Max security team that we are looking to fill across AppSec, CloudSec, product security, and then incident response and vulnerability management. Thank you again for the opportunity to join. This was a lot of fun, David and Leonid. I would do it absolutely again. But yes, reach out to me, guys. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter. I would love to connect with you guys.
And mention that you heard us on CISO Series. You may get, I don't know, some special treatment. I have no idea. Maybe punch
swag.
Who knows? All right. We're going to wrap it up right now, and we're going to go over to our meetup. So we'll wrap up just a few seconds early. Thank you to Brian Lozada, Leonid Belkind as well with Torque, and Brian with HBO Max. Huge thanks to our audience as always. You are always awesome. We greatly appreciate it. We won't be around next Friday, but we'll be around the Friday after. So please register for that. But for now, click on that link at the very bottom of the screen and join us for our meetup because we'd like to have fun with you. Join us. Andrew, take us out.